welcome to the UCC's fourth annual Earth Summit. I'm Brooks Barrett, the Environmental Justice Minister for the United Church of Christ and the Director of the Climate Hope Affiliates Program, a joint program of the United Church of Christ and Creation Justice Ministries. I'm excited to co-host this summit with one of the superstars of Climate Hope Affiliates, the one and only Zena Martin, who leads our chapter in Atlanta. Zena, say hello to our audience.
Thank you, Brooks. Hello, everyone. I am thrilled to be joining you all from Atlanta, where we are gathered in my beloved church home, First Congregational Church of Atlanta. Greetings to all of our in-person and virtual national audiences who have joined us today.
Fantastic to be doing this with you. You know, it was not until a few weeks ago that I realized this Earth Summit is the largest annual event of the United Church of Christ. It is. We have our big General Sin gatherings every 2 to 3 years, but it's nice that all of our settings, local, conference, and national, can come together once a year in common cause as we unite for our first calling in the Bible, the care of God's creation. The UCC's Council for Climate Justice was intentional about the broad and encompassing nature of this event when it was first created. To reflect our unity today, we will now hear words of welcome from local, conference, and national settings. To start us off, we will hear first from the UCC's General Minister and President, the Reverend Dr. Karen Georgia Thompson.
I am Reverend Dr. Karen Georgia Thompson, General Minister and President of the United Church of Christ. As we gather for this fourth annual United Church of Christ Earth Summit, we do so with gratitude for the care that we give to each other and the care that we have for our planet. One of the programmatic priorities for the national ministries of the United Church of Christ is climate action. We've chosen climate action as a priority because of its importance. This prioritization is a part of the commitment that we have in the United Church of Christ to be a part of the work that is global in reversing the abuses that have been experienced by our planet over the years. In this time of polycrises, our attention to justice cannot ignore the importance of climate action, of climate and people, the connection between climate and thriving, and between climate and the future of the world. We hold the possibilities. We are co-creators with the divine of a future with hope. Welcome to the United Church of Christ's fourth summit. I pray that the time together will be a time of collaboration, a time of inspiration, and a time of action as together we create a planet that has the possibilities to move forward into a future that holds a home for all. Thank you for being present.
We'll now hear from the Reverend Davy Fosberg, who is representing the Southeast Conference of the UCC.
Good afternoon. I am Reverend Davy Fosberg. I serve as the Associate Conference Minister here in the Southeast Conference, and it is my delight to bring greetings on behalf of our Conference Minister, Reverend Kim Wood, and our Board of Directors. We are so delighted to be able to be one of the co-hosts for this important summit, to be able to spend time listening and learning from one another and hearing ways in which we can continue to follow the call to care for our neighbor, and that including the planet on which we live and that we are entrusted to take care of. So I'm so delighted to be a part of the conversations today. Thank you.
Thank you. The Reverend Dr. Dwight Andrews of First Congregational United Church of Christ in Atlanta will offer our final words of welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to First Congregational Church. I'm Dwight Andrews, pastor of this church, and we are honored by your presence both here locally and virtually This is important work, and we are so thrilled that the church will continue to take leadership to help us all become better stewards of God's gift to us, that is our climate, our world. And so to all of you, on this important day, at a time when our world is threatened on so many sides, we're very grateful that we can do this work together. We expect to learn so much from one another, and we expect to be fully engaged with the good work that God has given us to do. This is a part of loving our neighbor, and so we're happy to have you here, and I look forward to being your partner going forward. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you very much, Reverend Fosberg and Reverend Andrews. Our schedule for today is to begin by looking back over this past year as we celebrate the accomplishments of the many different ministries of creation justice that are alive and thriving across the country. We will then hear from our esteemed keynote speaker of the day, the Reverend Dr. Kenneth Samuel, and immediately following, engage in a Q&A. After that, we will hear from some of our event sponsors before turning to two special award ceremonies. First, we will bestow the Dolly Burwell Prophetic Action Award, and then we will announce the winners of our Climate Hope Art Contest for children and youth. During our final hour, we will hear from three terrific speakers on a panel entitled Power to the People, Energy Justice for an Equitable Future. As we conclude, we will wrap up with ways to plug in and stay inspired.
Awesome, Zena. Thanks for setting the stage for today's event. Let's now look back over the amazing year we have had. In my nearly 11 years in doing this ministry, I have never seen more folks taking action than this past year. It's been incredibly uplifting, and what's truly exciting is that the level of action is only going to increase this next year. Many of you out there are central to our success, so thank you. Our two core programs are done in partnership with Creation Justice Ministries. To help get us started, we'll first hear from Marissa Salgado, who staffs the Creation Justice Churches program.
Hey y'all, my name is Marissa Salgado, and I have the honor of serving with Creation Justice Ministries as our church engagement manager. Creation Justice Ministries treasures our partnership with the United Church of Christ on Creation Justice Churches and Climate Hope affiliates. For those of you who are maybe unfamiliar with Creation Justice Ministries, we spun off of the National Council of Churches a number of years ago to focus on bringing together the diverse body of Christ in common cause for caring for God's planet and God's people. We work with over 36 different denominations and organizations. Creation Justice Churches is all about bringing a reflective and active approach to discerning how each of our churches can best live out our first calling in Scripture, to care for God's creation. This discernment is about worship and theology and spirituality. It is about walking the talk and how we tend to our church buildings and grounds. It is about inviting all church members and ministries to be a part of the process. Caring for God's creation isn't just for green teams. Creation Justice Churches also isn't just focused on what happens inside the walls of the church. It's about growing an awareness about how environmental harm impacts the larger world. It is about economic and racial justice. It is about addressing global inequities. And for us, this focus ultimately leads us to translate our care and concern for the larger world into action. So join with us in celebrating this year's newest Creation Justice Churches.
I am delighted to share with you the names of our 12 new Creation Justice Churches: Church of the Savior, UCC, Knoxville, Tennessee; Spring Hill, UCC, Spring Hill, Florida; Pilgrim Church, UCC, Redding, California; David's, UCC, Canal, Winchester, Ohio; Normandy Park, UCC, Normandy Park, Washington; Hadwin Park Congregational Church, Worcester, Massachusetts; Salem, UCC, Campbelltown, Pennsylvania; Smith Memorial Congregational Church, UCC, Hillsborough, New Hampshire; First Congregational Church of Shrewsbury, Shrewsbury, Massachusetts; First Congregational Church of Kalamazoo, Kalamazoo, Michigan; Dover, Foxcroft, Congregational Church, UCC, Dover, Foxcroft, Maine, and Friends Congregational Church, College Station, Texas. As I like to say, outside of my kids and family, the photos I have of them, some of my favorite photos to receive are the ones I get from our Creation Justice churches. We'll now take a look at some of those photos.
I'm very excited by the next part of our year in review. It was last summer that we launched our own chapter of Climate Hope Affiliates here in Atlanta. Wow, in 13 months, 14 Climate Hope Affiliate chapters have been launched. Look at where we are located. All over the map. We are in big cities and small cities, and we are in red, purple, and blue districts. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Climate Hope Affiliates, our calling is to address the interconnected crises of climate change and societal injustice. We do this by developing ongoing relationships of influence with our members of Congress, the local media, and our broader local communities. But let's not be theoretical here. This past year, we were part of a successful effort to defeat the Trump administration's proposal of cutting the EPA's budget by 55%. Let's have a round of applause for that. This administration is back at it again. They want to cut the EPA's budget for next year by 52%, while boosting the military budget by 44% to $1.5 trillion. Do you know how many EPAs we could have for $1.5 trillion? Well, let me tell you, we could have 170 EPAs with that much money. We are talking about dollars here, but dollars translate into lives. When we think about the effects of pollution in this country and that pollution doesn't impact everyone equally, there are high stakes for this work. It is a critical justice issue in our society today.
Let's take a look at who has been doing all this desperately needed advocacy. This is the order in which our chapters have been launched over the last 13 months. Our very first chapter ever was launched 13 months ago in Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania. And we had Framingham, Massachusetts, Concord, New Hampshire, the East Bay area of California, Carlisle, Pennsylvania, Ephrata, Pennsylvania, Atlanta, Georgia, Greater Cleveland, East Side in Ohio, Shasta, California, Collegeville, Pennsylvania, East Lansing, Michigan, Glen Ellen, Illinois, Cleveland, Ohio, Downers Grove, Illinois. Every month in our national webinars, one of our Climate Hope trainers, Daniel Kirk, leads us in celebrating our latest actions. Daniel is with us today. Daniel, can you give us a rundown of everything our chapters have accomplished this year?
You got it. Hello, everyone. Let me tell you about what has been accomplished that never would have happened without our chapters. On May 17th of last year, the first action ever recorded by a chapter came when the Reverend Dr. Deborah Clark of Framingham published a letter to the editor in the Metro West Daily News. Since then, chapters have racked up 54 published letters to the editor in newspapers like the New York Post, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and the Boston Globe. We have additionally had 4 op-eds published. Our chapters have had a total of 19 meetings with congressional staff. And recently, our Glen Ellen chapter hosted our first town hall with a congressional representative. When you tally up all the outreach events, sermons, and everything that our chapters have done since Reverend Dr. Clark's first letter to the editor, we have had 111 actions. Now you can see why Brooks said there has never been more people taking action than this past year, and why it's only going to increase this next year. Way to go, Climate Hope affiliates.
Our chapters are absolutely incredible. You are a blessing. The inspiration is going to continue now. Zena, introduce our keynote speaker for us.
It would be my pleasure, Brooks. I am honored to introduce the Reverend Dr. Kenneth Samuel. He got his start in the ministry when he was ordained at Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta. For those on Zoom, in our Zoom audience, if you didn't already know, that's where Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was pastor. Reverend Dr. Samuel is currently the pastor of Victory for the World Church in Decatur, Georgia. With a BA degree from Wesleyan University in Connecticut, a Master's of Divinity from Emory University's Candler School of Theology, and a Doctor of Ministry from the United Theological Seminary in Dayton, Ohio, the Reverend Dr. Samuel has taught at Clark Atlanta University and at Lancaster Theological Seminary. His first book, entitled Solomon's Success: 4 Essential Keys to Leadership, appeared as a #1 bestseller in the Christian Century magazine. Many in the United Church of Christ know him as a prolific writer of daily devotionals that never fail to stir and uplift readers. Reverend Dr. Samuel has applied his many gifts to the ministry of justice. He has held leadership positions in a range of organizations, from the National Black Justice Coalition to the NAACP. We are grateful to have you here today and eagerly await to hear from you, Reverend Dr. Samuel.
Thank you for that warm introduction. And let me say what an honor it is. I bring you greetings from your brothers and sisters at Victory for the World United Church of Christ in Decatur. What an honor it is to be here this afternoon at First Congregational with my friend and brother, Dr. Dwight Andrews. Thank you also, Dr. Brooks Brent, for your kind and gracious invitation and patience, and to all of you who are here in person and who are online, as we convene hearts and minds around this very, very important focus on earth and environment. We're thankful to be a part of the United Church of Christ and for the vision and the passion it has for the environment. A man was touring in South America, down around Peru and Brazil, and he came across 2 rare birds, each of which spoke 3 different languages, one of which was English. The man decided to purchase those birds and send those birds as a gift to his mom, who lived in New York City. So he had them packaged and shipped carefully from Peru back to New York City. And after he finished his tour in South America, he got back to New York and called his mother to ask if she had received the birds. And she said to him, "Son, I certainly want to thank you for those birds. They were quite delicious." And he said to her, "Mother, please do not tell me that you ate those birds." He said, "Mother, those were rare talking birds." He said, "Mother, those birds spoke 3 different languages, including English." She said, "Well, when I was getting the pot hot, they should have said something." I want to tell you today that in America, the pot is hot, and we need to say something. In Matthew chapter 14, verses 40 through 42, you'll find these words attributed to Jesus. "Just as the weeds are sorted out and burned in the fire, so it will be at the end of the world. The Son of Man will send his angels, and they will remove from his kingdom everything that causes sin and all who do evil. And the angels will throw them into the fiery furnace, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." Well, I'm well aware that the subject of hell and damnation is not well received in progressive circles. Religions and resolutions based on a fear of eternal damnation after we die are considered antiquated and ill-equipped to provide the motivations necessary for sustaining life while we live. Fear of hell can be a motivator, but not a sustaining motivator. When I was 12 years old, I walked up to the front of my church, and at the conversion invitation of the pastor, I gave my life to Christ, largely because I feared dying and then burning in hell. And to be honest, my 69-year-old self today still agrees with my 12-year-old self many yesterdays ago. I still don't want to die and go to hell. But my earnest desire to avoid hell after I die offers me little or no help in dealing with the hell I'm catching while I'm still alive. Whether you believe in a place of eternal torment or not, the truth is all of us are catching hell and living in hell and trying to make it through hell right now. You don't have to believe in fire and brimstone to know that the world is on fire and water can't put it out. You don't have to believe in burning hellfire to know that fossil fuels are back in fashion, fueling gas emissions that trap heat in the atmosphere and drive global temperatures up to hot as hell levels. This is hell right now. You don't have to believe in the fiery flames of hell to know that our uber heating planet is supercharging hurricanes, exacerbating droughts, and intensifying wildfires like the ones presently ravaging southeast Georgia right now. Hell is here. You don't have to believe in a lake of fire and brimstone to know that accelerating heat in the atmosphere is melting Arctic ice, contributing to rising sea levels and threatening coastal cities on every continent. We are living in hell right now. You don't have to believe in spiritual wickedness in high places. You can see spiritual wickedness in low places through the alarming losses of biodiversity and natural habitations, which are increasing levels of extinction for many of our natural species. You may not believe that a rich man died and went to hell, then begged Abraham in heaven to send a neglected poor man named Lazarus from heaven to hell in order to cool the tormented rich man's tongue from the flames. You may not believe the rich man needed water in hell, but you should know that according to recent research, nearly half to two-thirds of the world's population, some 4 billion people, face severe water scarcity for at least 1 month out of each year. And more than 2 billion people, roughly 1 in 4 people on the planet currently lack access to safely managed drinking water. I'm telling you, this is hell. You don't have to believe in the fiery darts of hell to see what in Glock we trust has done to life in America. We have more guns than people. We carry more guns than people, and despite the massive murder people told we suffer from mass violence in America, our legislators keep proving that they care more for guns than people. This is hell. And you don't have to believe in a cosmic war between good and evil to see the imminent devastations of war between human greed and human grace. The bombs we're sending to decimate civilizations overseas are the same bombs that explode in destructive deprivations in our own civilization. Deprivations of health care, deprivations of quality public education, deprivations of resources for environmental protection and research, deprivations of social security and civil liberty. Sin is not just spiritual and individual. Sin is systemic and institutional. Viruses don't just show up and infect the bloodstream. Viruses show up and infect the body politic. Hell is not just an eternal projection. Hell is a right now reality. I'm saying hell needs a revival today, not to bring back fear of torment beyond the grave, but to bring back accountability for the torment we live in right now. Hell needs a revival because accountability for human stewardship of the natural order needs a revival. From the White House to the crack house, accountability is at an all-time low in our country today. And believing in hell does come with a strong sense of human accountability. Another thing that believing in hell comes with is believing that hell is a place that none of us have to go. People who believe in hell, like I do, will tell you that everybody in hell is there by choice. Because choices to reject life and neglect life have no other option but hell. And people like me who believe in hell will tell you that the hell beyond us is actually determined by how well we handle the hell that we're living in right now. David the psalmist cried, "Where can I go from your spirit, O Lord? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up into the heavens, behold, you are there. But if I make my bed even in hell, behold, you are there. If I rise to the wings of the dawn and settle on the far sides of the sea, even there, your hand will guide me and your right hand will hold me fast." God being with us, even as we make our beds in hell, is what gives us the unction to get up from our beds and run a revival in hell so God's work of repentance and redemption can work through us in hell. Hell needs a revival because there needs to be a call of repentance for our political and moral failure to protect and preserve this precious planet that God has gifted us. In her landmark Harlem Renaissance novel entitled "Their Eyes Were Watching God," Zora Neale Hurston depicts an horrific scene in which two of the main characters, Janie and her husband Tea Cake, find themselves caught in a devastating hurricane while living as migrant workers in the Florida Everglades. The title of the novel is lifted from a scene during the storm where Janie and Tea Cake huddle in a shanty, powerless against the elements, staring into the dark. But then Zora Neale Hurston writes, as they looked into the darkness, their eyes were watching God. When Janie and Tea Cake were watching God in the storm, they saw some things. They saw God show them the hell that is created as a consequence for individual and institutional responsibility in regard to nature. When Janie and Tea Cake were watching God in the storm, God showed them the results of society's failure to prioritize safety and preparedness in the face of nature's unpredictability. God showed them the hell that they brought upon themselves due to their own failure to respect nature by heeding early evacuation warnings. It's amazing how much of ourselves is revealed when we watch for God to show us some things in the storms that we bring upon ourselves. Hell needs a revival because too many of us are not feeling enough conviction for the storms and devastations that we have fostered in life. Growing up in the northeastern part of rural South Carolina near Myrtle Beach, I remember that whenever a thunderstorm rolled in, and back in the day they rolled in consistently, whenever the thunderstorm rolled in, we as children had to stop playing, turn off the TV, turn off them lights, get away from the window, go sit your narrow self down somewhere and be quiet. And whenever I tried to talk over the storm, an elder would turn to me and say, "Hush, child, God is speaking." I'm not sure what I was supposed to hear, but what I kept hearing back then and what I keep hearing now in darkened skies and rolling thunder and clapping lightning, I keep hearing judgment. Judgment. Judgment that was somehow both natural and supernatural. Judgment that was both upon us and beyond us. After time, I didn't understand what had been done so wrong to deserve God's thunderous judgment. But as I grew up in Dixieland, where cotton is king and where southern trees bear strange fruit, I soon found out we are not just punished for our sins, we are punished by our sins. Lastly, hell needs a revival because the horrors of hell really serve as invitations to make a change. Crying the blues and complaining about hell's conditions won't get you out of hell. Rolling over in denial and acting like the house is not on fire won't get you out of hell. Acting like our earthly actions have no eternal consequences will not get you out of hell. The only thing that can rescue us from the immediacy and the eventuality of hell is a change. A change of heart, a change of mind, a change of values, a change of priorities. Right now we can change by carrying reusable shopping bags and refilling water bottles that help to minimize our use of plastics. Right now we can change by switching off lights when not in use, taking shorter showers and considering renewable energy sources like solar panels. Right now we can change by incorporating more plant-based foods into our diets and lessening the carbon footprint caused by farming livestock. Change is the only thing that can reverse the curse and deliver us from hell. Christian philosopher and civil rights leader Howard Thurman said he had a vision that he actually died and went to hell. Howard Thurman said when he woke up in hell and looked around, things didn't look so bad. He said, first of all, hell was air conditioned, so it wasn't hot. And he said, I looked around and nobody in hell was sweating. Howard Thurman said in hell, he saw people mingling and moving to music and rhythms undergirded by a throbbing, steady beat. Thurman said the situation was so inviting and the music was so enticing that he walked over to an attractive woman and asked her if she'd like to dance. Certainly, she replied. And they went to the dance floor and went to sliding and gliding to the beat. But after some time, Howard Thurman said he got tired of dancing. So he said to his dance partner, excuse me, but I think I'll stop for a while and go get some refreshments. Come with me if you'd like. The woman replied, sir, you forgot this is hell. And in hell, the music never stops. And in hell, the beat never ends. And in hell, you cannot ever, ever change partners. Hell is a place that forbids change. But the only way out of hell is to make changes in defiance of hell. I say we have to defy hell in order to get out of hell. In order to get out of hell, we have to say hell no to some things. Hell no to the immutability and the intractability and the inevitability that hell imposes. We have to say hell no to all of hell's no changes. We have to say hell no to the decision to delete history from our public schools, Native American history, Black American history, because we ought to know that knowledge of the hell we have been through will give us enlightenment for the hell that we are going through. We have to say hell no to federal policies that exclude and stigmatize transgender people, because we cannot believe that a man in a dress is a greater threat to our society than a pedophile in the White House. We have to say hell no to no change in ICE policies that terrorize undocumented workers without due process, because immigrants are not the ones to blame for the house that is divided against itself. We have to say hell no to the military-industrial complex, for the push to war in Iran, the push to war in Palestine, the push to war in Venezuela, and the push to war on DEI. Because in the words of Dr. King, hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. And darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. And no matter how hard we try to justify it, hell is still war. And war is still hell. Plus, it kills the grass. Getting out of hell begins with a hell no to every hellish defiance of progressive change. Hell tries to impose inevitability upon us. But when we defy hell, we not only set a new course for our eternal destiny, we set a new course for our daily living. The choice to change, decisions that facilitate our natural and communal destruction, is ours. A woman tossed and turned frantically in her bed one night as she was having a bad dream. She dreamt a growling bear broke into her home with fangs and claws exposed. As the ferocious bear approached her, she screamed out, "Stop! Please! Are you going to kill me?" The bear replied, "Woman, I don't know. This is your dream." Like it or not, the nightmare we're currently living in is a reflection of our own dreams, our own desires, and our own decisions. Like it or not, the crisis of the environment we inhabit is a crisis created by us. And to be sure, there will be hell to pay. James Baldwin said, "No more water. There will be fire next time." But the good news is that hell's refusal to accept change can be refused. The good news is that nobody living in hell today needs to live in hell or die in hell. Because according to the Christian narrative, before Jesus, after his crucifixion, ascended back into heaven, he descended down into hell. And according to the Christian narratives, what was Jesus doing in hell? What in the world is God doing in hell? And the answer is God is giving everybody in hell the opportunity to accept change and be redeemed. Good news in hell, the revival has begun. Let's repent so new life can begin. Thank you.
Oh my, that was incredible. Thank you, Reverend Doctor. Fantastic, fantastic. I'm excited. I think in the next year, I'm going to start seeing people walking around with T-shirts that say "Hell no." I think this is going to be a trend that starts. Man, that was terrific. For our Q&A today, our audience in Atlanta will be able to ask questions from the floor, and Zena will repeat them for our Zoom audience. Meanwhile, I'll start us off with a question. Those on our Zoom audience, please type in your questions using that Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. Question just to get us started off as people are generating those thoughts. I'm going to give a free advertisement for our preacher sermons on YouTube. I've been checking them out. And I would like to know, who is this Caligula person you sometimes talk about? Can you explain for our audience who Caligula is and why Caligula is a relevant reference for us today?
Caligula is a reference to what I learned in school, the Roman emperors, and some of the most egregious Roman emperors. None of them were quite examples of leadership and morality, but Caligula was certainly goes down in history as one of the worst for his just reckless abandonment, for his prodigal nature, for his complete disregard, not only for the affairs of the empire, but even for his own family, all in the name of Roman domination. And my assessment is that the current iteration of Caligula now occupies the White House in America. And all of our protections for the environment, all of our protections for human community and democracy itself are under fire, hellish fire, because of the administration and the terrible priorities of this Caligula and the system that backs him. And so that is my reference to Caligula, and I only pray that the damage being done to the empire is not irreversible.
Thank you, Reverend Dr. Samuel. First of all, I'm going to say you said a word and a word and a word. That was amazing. So now I will take a question from the audience, and if you say it to me, I'll repeat it into the microphone so that our Zoom audience can hear. Are there any questions from the audience? Yes, Gary. Okay. So the question from the audience was, as we are focusing on creation justice, climate justice, are we placing focus on data centers and what they are doing to our environment? Okay, that's for you.
I'm not well aware of exactly where we are with the data center. I've heard bits and pieces of it, particularly I think around matters that deal with water and air. And so I think we, again, as we confront the challenges of AI and what resources AI requires to actually operate. I was surprised to know I was doing a PowerPoint presentation and on AI with AI assistants, and I was creating images. And one of my computer friends said, "You just used the pool of water." And I said, "What do you mean by that?" And he said, "Well, I may be exaggerating." He says, "But those images do require a lot of water just to create the PowerPoint image." So he says, you might want to pull something from the internet instead. But those are things to be considered, and I think those are things we're all going to have to look at moving forward. I wish I knew more about it.
I'm happy to answer a question about that. We, within our Climate Hope Affiliates chapter, we are starting to focus a lot on the data centers, and as we know, they are being built here in Georgia. I will say that I've noticed that Senator John Ossoff, just in the last couple of days, has really started talking more about the data centers. And we know, for instance, in Social Circle, Georgia, there's been a lot of focus on that. So this is something that we as a chapter and as all of the Climate Hope affiliates across the country are really starting to focus on, because they do use a lot of water. They also are driving up energy bills significantly. And obviously now with, this war and all of that, our energy bills are going to go up even more. So it will not only affect what we are looking at in terms of climate justice, but we have elections coming up, and so we really need to focus on candidates who take this seriously. And that's what I would say about that. I think our next question is from the Zoom audience, I believe.
All right. We've got questions coming in on Zoom. first question that came in on Zoom really wants to hear from our keynote speaker, Reverend Dr. Samuels, trying to draw out of your ministry. I know sometimes you're described as a pastor and an organizer, and so drawing from that your experience, our questioner wants to know what are best practices to initiate and develop community partnerships, to share what we're hearing today, to share the kind of messages that you're delivering. What are your strategies and best practices from your ministry that you can share with us today?
What we are trying to do in our congregation is try to emphasize the interchange between spiritual devotion and nature. And so now we're having a lot of our prayer meetings outside, doing walks, because of course that's healthy and it's a way for people to connect with the environment. We find a lot of energy, particularly with young people who like to be out doing things and helping them to lead efforts at, reducing plastics, bottle collections, those kind of things have been very helpful because young people themselves like to do things that actually make a difference and that can make a difference. And of course, it's a way for older persons to also know that there are practical steps that we can take to do it as well. So I think that we're gonna, as we move and hopefully see more of the crisis and look at ways that we can do it, there are things that even in Georgia we can do. When I was in California, I had to carry all of my groceries out in my hands. In Georgia, we would say, oh my goodness, they might think I stole something because I don't have a bag. But actually in California, it's a way of, protecting the planet, cutting down on plastic bags and using renewable bags. And those are simple things that can be done, that can be presented to the congregation. They're not onerous, but people can do them. They're easy to do, and they do make a difference. And I think more of those kinds of things, bottles, plastics, reusable bags, solar panels, those kinds of things we can talk of, as well as have been mentioned, putting pressure on elected officials to change the system and redirect the resources for environmental protection and enjoyment.
So basically what the question is from Zoom is, how can churches be pushing back on the fossil fuel industry? What can we be doing also to combat misinformation and all of that?
Yeah. Yes. Well, we certainly can be pushing for more electric refueling stations because we know that has been a lot of the reticence with persons just wondering if the infrastructure, if the grid is in place to really support electric vehicles. I think that once we can give people better assurance that those grids and charging stations are in place. I live in a high rise, and we recently, within the last year, added charging stations to our garage. And I think that those are things that we can press for. We press for it in our community, in our homeowners association. Churches can purchase vehicles that are at least hybrid to electric. That makes a big difference as well. And we can encourage members who drive cars to consider electric to push back on fossil fuel. I think that what's going to push back on fossil fuel is less demand. And we are agents in creating or diminishing that demand, and we just have to do everything we can to diminish it so that we can take the next step and move forward into renewable energy.
Right. We had two identical questions come from two different people. They both want to know, what would Jesus do now?
Great question. Wow. I think Jesus would say, I'm having a revival in hell. You need to come. And that's really what it's all about, because nobody is denying that we are in dire straits. And nobody is denying that the planet is on fire, at least nobody sensible. But we do have to consider ways to reverse the course of things, because we know that the course is not leading to anything good for human life, for the planet, for the environment. And so we have the power to do it. And somehow recognizing the problem, recognizing our contribution to the problem, and then being convicted and converted to change and do something different is really the key. And that's as old-time revivals, but it is as necessary today as it ever was if we are to find the way forward, morally, spiritually, and even practically. Let's pick up responsibility and accountability again, and then not just be hearers of the word, but doers of the word, so we can save ourselves and save our planet.
Amen.
All right. We have a question that evokes Martin Luther King Jr. in his talking about sort of the interlocking evils, systemic racism, systemic poverty, militarism. And so today we can also think about Christian nationalism and the environment along with that. So the question is, do you believe that these interlocking evils must be attacked or simultaneously or individually is the question.
Militarism, racism, and certainly you can add now Christian nationalism. All of them, in a very real sense, are violations against nature. Naturally, the Native Americans were practically decimated. Naturally, the brown and black people and women and immigrants from all over the country who came here to make America the nation that it is, economically, agriculturally, commercially, those laborers, those people made it happen. And Christian nationalism is an effort to erase the very people who gave life and breath to the nation. It's not natural, and somehow anything natural can't be godly. So anything unnatural can't be godly. Anything against the creation cannot please the Creator. So I think that we have to push back on these things as the unnatural atrocities that they are, and we have to reclaim our natural inheritance as stewards, protectors, caretakers of the created order. And that includes caretakers of human community and human life, as well as the natural order that we live in.
All right, thank you for those responses. Next question we have is, what is your vision for a hell revival in terms of what would it look like in Decatur, Georgia? What would it look like in cities and towns across the country?
My vision for revival, was that the question?
Yes. Talking about sort of in cities and towns across the country, what you've been talking about today, how would you see that most fully manifested?
I think this Earth Summit, sponsored by the United Church of Christ, is the answer we're looking for, because this gives each of us the opportunity to take the inspiration back to our congregations, our churches, our families, and make the issue a priority. I think many people would say that the environment and the quality of life, the air, the water, the ground, the vegetables we eat, I think people would say that's important, but people don't think in terms of how important it is to make sure that those things are preserved and protected. They're taken for granted. And I think it becomes incumbent upon us to leave this revival and go back home to our churches and congregations as evangelists for the environment, evangelists for renewal, evangelist for being very conscientious about making decisions to preserve and protect the gift of the environment. That's not something that many people think is as important enough to become a priority, but it needs to be. And I think it's our job to help people understand. So I think the good news, the evangelism begins right here, as it has been talked about many other places. But now we just have to leave the revival and do the work for the renewal and the redemption, because it is possible, and we have resources available, and we just have to put hand to the plow and get the job done.
Brooks, Reverend Dr. Samuel, we have, I believe, a question from the audience. Is that the case? Yes, sir. We had a question from the audience talking about, and this gentleman is originally from India and lives here in Greater Atlanta area in Dunwoody. And what he said was that, these multinational companies are creating things, whatever it is, whether it's a t-shirt or a widget or, leather or what have you, and it directly affects, and I would argue this happens in developed countries as well, but it directly affects people who are poorer. They may even be working in these factories, et cetera. And so there is a divide, and it is very inequitable. And so the question is, what can we do to either A, help the poorer people who are directly affected, and or what can the poorer people do who are being directly affected? Is that fair? Okay, great.
I should probably let you speak on this more than me, but I would just say briefly, it is a terrible dilemma to be in, to have to work in order to eat and feed your family, and yet the very company that you work for is polluting your environment. That's what I heard, and I think it is so. It's a terrible predicament. And, the question is, how much of our lives are we really willing to sacrifice in the name of progress? And I think what you put to us is a question that all of us have to answer, because all of us, with as you mentioned, the clothes we wear, the plastics, the rubber, all of it feeds a commercial enterprise that's supposed to be serving us, but is really killing us. And I think that we're just going to have to find a way to extricate ourselves from it for our own life's sake, because the corporation is not going to stop it. We have to.
Excellent.
All right.
Brooks,
Thank you.
More questions?
Yeah. We've come to the end of our Q&A time. All good things must come to an end. This has been fantastic. Thank you so much, Reverend Dr. Kenneth Samuel. It's been amazing to have you with us today and to hear from you. We have more to come. Today's event would not have been possible without our host and co-sponsors. We had 6 sponsors for this event. The 5 financial institutions connected to the United Church of Christ came together, and they have a video for us. And so these institutions are not just about financial stewardship, they're also about environmental stewardship. Let us hear now as we watch this great video that they put together for us.
Hi, I'm Matt Wagner, Vice President of Institutional Relationships at United Church Funds. I want to thank you all for attending this very important event in the life of the church as we seek to witness to the challenges facing our planet resulting from climate change. At United Church Funds, building sustainable investment strategies to confront climate change and environmental racism are pillars of our work in building sustainable investment platforms for our clients. We're very proud to sponsor this event and join you all in this cause. If you'd like to learn more about sustainable investing at United Church Funds, I invite you to go to our website, ucfunds.org, and I encourage you to align your church's investment strategies with your values related to climate change and social justice. Thank you all and have a great day.
Hi, I'm Maria Coyne. I'm the president and CEO of the Cornerstone Fund. Did you know that between 2023 and 2025, the Cornerstone Fund financed 28 church improvement projects that included some element of creation care? That's everything from solar panels to microgrids to geothermal and heat pumps. We really are invested in this work, and we appreciate the investors who have faith in us, who've invested in our Creation Care Fund that allow us to provide lending that offers low-cost loans to churches and other faith-based organizations who are interested in doing creation care projects to reduce their carbon footprint. Please visit us at cornerstonefund.org to find out more about both our creation care investments and loans, as well as our disaster care program. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Farnaz Ansari, Senior Vice President of Marketing and Sales at Insurance Board. As a financial ministry partner of United Church of Christ, serving UCC ministries for over 40 years, we see the adverse consequences of warming climate on our insured church properties. I want to thank you for your attention to this important topic of climate justice and invite you to take proactive action in making your properties more resilient against climate change. Visit our resources to mitigate risk for your church property at www.insuranceboard.org. Happy Earth Day and enjoy the summit.
As people of faith, we are called to love our neighbors, care for creation, and help build a world where dignity and opportunity are shared by all. We're stewards, not owners, entrusted with caring for God's earth. That's why at the Pension Board's United Church of Christ, we invest our members' retirement assets with intention. Faith-led, sustainable investing aligns financial resources with United Church of Christ values, recognizing that capital can be a powerful force for a good and just world. Through the pension boards, our investments support renewable energy, energy-efficient infrastructure, forest conservation, and sustainable housing. This is financial stewardship as a ministry of justice.
My name is Patrick Dugan from the United Church of Christ Church Building and Loan Fund, and there are two reasons that I'm excited about Earth Summit 2026 on Saturday, April 25th, online. The first reason I'm excited is that Dr. Kenneth Samuels, pastor of Victory for the World Church in Decatur, Georgia, will be the keynote speaker. And Victory for the World Church is a loan partner at Church Building and Loan Fund. The second reason I'm excited is that another loan partner at Church Building and Loan Fund, who has our largest loan, used that money to redesign their entire campus into a green campus. Not only are they saving money on electricity, but they are leading in climate justice in one of the largest cities in our country. Join us Saturday for Earth Summit.
Thank you so much to our sponsors. Later, we will hear from our sixth sponsor, who will speak to us live from Atlanta. We now turn towards our two award ceremonies for today. One of the things I love about our Climate Hope ministry is that it's intergenerational. Get ready to have your hearts touched and spirits lifted by the art of our children and youth. The talent of our younger generations is immense. I'm going to turn things back over to Brooks for our award ceremonies.
Thank you, Zena. I am thrilled to do this portion of our summit. We have got some absolutely amazing artists to lift up in our art contest award ceremony today. This is the fourth year that we have done this contest, and I never fail to be impressed and stirred by the entries that we receive. Let's begin our celebration by previewing some of the excellent artwork we received. We had a number of terrific renderings of our shared home, this planet of ours. Catherine from Rock Spring UCC in Arlington, Virginia, creatively presented the Earth as God's painting. And you got to love the heart at the center of our planet from 6-year-old Evelyn of Congregational UCC in Iowa City. We gather today as a community with hope, and this year's contest theme came from this powerful verse in Jeremiah. For surely I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord, plans for your welfare and not for harm, to give you a future with hope. As we enter into this time of celebration to honor the visions and passions of our children and youth, reflect for a moment on the people you care about in your life and the kind of future you dream for them. Art is such a powerful form of expression, and each year we take our winning art to help us convey to others what motivates and inspires us to act. This year, our children and youth had the task of casting a vision for us of the kind of world we want to live in. Here are some of the works of art that cast a vision that encompasses the creatures of the earth, our communities, and our desire for a clean, sustainable, and flourishing environment. To care for God's creation, we need everyone. Our churches are one of the rare places where the different generations can come together with shared values and commitments that unite us. What a powerful embodiment and experience of hope to see members of all ages engaging in reflection and action as a community. Some fun facts about the participation in this year's contest. We had 354 submissions from our youngest participant, who was 2 years old. We had an excellent art submissions in all of our age categories, from the youngest to the oldest, with a majority coming from our 7 to 9-year-olds and our 10 to 13-year-olds. Submissions came from across the U.S., from Hawaii to Maine to Florida, and many throughout the Midwest and East, 67 congregations from 22 different UCC conferences. Some artists shared their vision of a future with hope in words as well as in their artwork. Their messages truly resonated and inspired, so we wanted to highlight a couple of those. Dylan from Northfield, Minnesota reminds us every little thing adds up. Do what you can to help the earth. Nina from Milton, Massachusetts writes, I believe there will be a rain of hope. This rain of hope will wash away the sorrows of this world. Thank you to those and other finalists who shared their hopes. And now we'll be able to see all of the finalists. Congratulations to each of you, and thank you for submitting your artwork. Wow, thank you to all of the finalists and all of the artists who participated. Determining our winners was a very difficult task. I think we started off with 14 potential winners, and then we had to make our selections. Here's the criteria we used for our finalists and winners. We were looking for thoughtful engagement with our theme, A Future with Hope, as well as artistic ability and creativity. Our contest also provides fresh artwork for our advocacy postcards, and we find ways to share the artwork in other formats as well throughout the year. Winners for each age group category will be announced today, and then we will announce our overall winner. Before we share this year's winner, let's give another round of applause to our 2025 Climate Hope Art Contest winner, Natalie from Bethlehem UCC in Evansville, Indiana. We have enjoyed this colorful, inspirational artwork on our climate advocacy postcards this past year. Drum roll, please, as we announce our age group winners in these 4 categories. For ages 6 and under, congratulations to Braden of Smith Memorial Congregational Church in Hillsborough, New Hampshire. We love this vibrant image of joy and life. Thank you, Braden. For ages 7 to 9, our winner is Viviana of Hillsborough First UCC in Oregon. Another colorful, vibrant expression of hope featuring trees and plants. Thank you, Viviana. Our winner for ages 10 to 13 is Mahalia from Church of the Good Shepherd in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Mahalia's art has a profound resonance with our theme, demonstrating a way we can nurture restoration and new life. Thank you, Mahalia. Our winner for the 14 through 18-year-old age group is Serena from Congregational Church of South Hempstead, New York. A brilliant and vibrant piece with landscape and a church steeple that capture a shining vision of the future. The artistry and care is outstanding. Thank you, Serena. And drum roll again, announcing our overall winner, Leah, age 12 from First Church in Belfast, Maine. Congratulations, Leah. Woohoo. Leah's artwork depicts a bird and rainbow of hope, revealing the flourishing future we can all hope for with creatures living in a beautiful environment. Leah's artwork is thoughtful and the perspective is unique. Leah's art inspires us to act for clean energy, climate justice, and a future with hope that sustains us all. A big congratulations to Leah for her winning artwork. Thank you to all of the artists who put time, energy, and thoughtfulness into your artwork submissions. Let's take a moment to close this portion of our time together with a prayer of gratitude. Loving Creator God, we celebrate and give thanks for the creation that sustains us daily, for the power of love and care that inspires us to act for justice. We offer deep gratitude to the children and youth who are at the center of our movement of care and concern for your creation. We give thanks for the gifts of art, expression, and thoughtful engagement with themes of hope and flourishing. We give thanks for all the parents, guardians, congregations, and church staff who coordinated, encouraged, and made space and time for young people to participate in this artistic endeavor and to share their gifts with our larger community. As we go forward, may these artists inspire our actions for justice as we reflect on their visions for a future with hope. Open our hearts to the needs of the world and give us courage and strength to continue our efforts to build communities of care and to recreate a more just and sustainable ways forward. Bless us in our learning, our work, and our action. Amen. We are grateful to all of you who have joined from around the country for this ceremony. And now we are moving towards our second award, the Dolly Burwell Prophetic Action Award. Let's begin by hearing from none other than that legendary trailblazer for justice who played such an instrumental role in organizing her community in Warren County, North Carolina, as the movement for environmental justice was born. Listen now to Dolly Burwell.
I'm so honored and I'm so delighted to be a part of UCC's 4th Annual Earth Summit. Today, as we celebrate the accomplishments and the successes of both our advocates and our activists, I just want to highlight and emphasize the importance of how we do and how we answer God's call as a community. To sustain ourselves, we really do need each other. We cannot do this work alone. We need both our friends and our church members who provide us encouragement and support along the way. I've always believed that God works in and through community. And with this year's winner, we see community in action, and we see God at work. I join you now as we hear the announcement of the winner, and I applaud all that they do and that they have done as vessels of God's justice and of God's love.
Fantastic. And we see Dolly Burwell joining us in our online Zoom audience today. Great to have you with us, Dolly. And I saw your message. I loved it. You said, keep on keeping on. We're grateful for you. And now the Dolly Burwell Prophetic Action Award. It's an award given to a collective group or community that has exemplified the prophetic tradition of seeking justice in relationship to those wielding power in our government and society. This year, the award goes to a Climate Hope affiliate chapter that took 43 actions this past year, including 3 sermons, 4 published op-eds, 10 meetings with congressional staff, 12 published letters to the editor, 14 outreach events. It's mind-boggling how much this one chapter was able to accomplish. In one of their op-eds that appeared in their state's leading newspaper, they concluded by writing, "Fortunately, communities of faith across the country and here in New Hampshire are stepping up. A new fast-growing band of climate advocates have created Climate Hope affiliate chapters across the country, including here in New Hampshire. The climate crisis is a moral one, and members are establishing relationships with congressional offices to protect the EPA and to press for renewable energy. Join us in speaking for justice. There is reason to hope that if we all work together, we can protect the earth and preserve the health of the people who inhabit it." If you haven't picked up on it by now, the winner of the Dolly Burwell Prophetic Action Award is the Concord chapter of Climate Hope affiliates. We have got a few photos of their members in action in different places. And here is the award that they will be receiving.
To the Concord chapter of Climate Hope affiliates. Well deserved. We move now to our esteemed panel that will be moderated by Reverend Dr. Tiffany Linnell Mackey, who is an organizational strategist and policy consultant, who also serves as vice chair of the board of directors for Georgia Interfaith Power and Light. Reverend Dr. Tiffany, we are grateful for you and to be able to partner with Georgia Interfaith Power and Light, also known as GIPL, for this summit. We will let you take it from here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. I always have to check my time. I'm not sure of the time of day, but it is, oh, thank you. I did not see that very big red clock. It is so good to be with you all this afternoon. I have the great pleasure and honor of introducing our panelists who you have not already met, and going through some questions after they speak. So without further ado, I'll start with Briante, who is to my immediate left. Briante McCorkle serves as Executive Director of Georgia Conservation Voters. Briante has spent her career training activists, advancing equity and inclusion in the environmental movement, and organizing grassroots voters. She formerly served as the Director of Engagement at Eco Districts, and before that as the Georgia Sierra Club Assistant Director. Briante has been honored with the Rachel's Network Catalyst Award, the annual Grace Fixer Award, and the Dr. Espanola Jackson Energy Justice Award. And I happen to know her. So I read the bio, but I happen to know her, so please give her a round of applause. Our next panelist is Chandra Farley, who serves as the Chief Sustainability Officer for the City of Atlanta and leads the Mayor's Office of Sustainability and Resilience. Chandra's charge is the development of a comprehensive climate resilience strategy that will address energy insecurity, healthy housing, local food systems, waste diversion, building decarbonization, workforce job training, fleet electrification, and EV charging infrastructure, while advancing the city's goal to achieve 100% clean energy for 100% of Atlantans by 2035. You know, very easy, non-stress filled work, I'm sure. Please welcome another wonderful person that I have the privilege of knowing, Chandra Farley. Each of our panelists will have a moment to speak, and so I will start to my immediate left, if that's okay with Briante, and then we'll go from there. So go ahead, without further ado.
Okay. Well, hello, everyone. I am Briante. I run the Georgia Conservation Voters. I'm the executive director. I've been doing that work since about 2019. And have spent my whole career working in the field of climate and environment. It's not something that I thought I would make my way into when I went to college. I came here to go to Georgia State. I actually used to live in the dorm rooms right there, right around the corner. I walk by this building on a near daily basis. And I started off thinking I was going to be a nursing major. I was going to help people one at a time. I was going to go get a certified registered nurse anesthetist. That was the plan, which is basically like very close to anesthesiology without the doctorate degree. And I was going to, make 6 figures a year sticking needles in people. That was the plan. And then, I went to the Andrew Young School of Policy Studies and learned, I took a political science class, and it was about global issues and of all of the issues that we are facing globally, all of which are very deep, complicated, multi-layered, multi-generational issues to solve. When we got to the climate change section, I was super annoyed. I was like, why? If we don't have a planet that can sustain life, we won't be concerned about all of these other issues, some of which feel altruistic, like education for all. If people are worried about survival, of meeting their basic needs, and that, the process to do so is shifting dramatically because of a changing climate, we're not going to be able to focus on being our best and highest selves. And so I figured we could just tackle this problem, and then we'll move on to the other things. Let's just fix this, and then just just handle it. Just fix a global climate problem. As a college student, you can thank a little naivety for jumping neck deep in some waters that I've been swimming in ever since. I've made my way to Georgia Conservation Voters, where we work to advance climate and environmental justice. And we do that a few different ways. My most favorite way is doing what I'm doing now, which is talking to people, talking with people, building up the next generation of climate leaders, so organizing and educating folks on these issues and making sure that they feel empowered in our democracy, and that they know that they play an important role in what can be done. And then I also get involved in lobbying, mostly at the state capitol, but sometimes at the city level and the county level, because ultimately the words on paper shape society. And so we've got to be there and making sure that we get good policies, good laws passed. And then I would say my least favorite part, but also sometimes the funnest part, is the electoral accountability. So we do endorse candidates and we do help them win their elections when we believe that they're going to be great for people and planet. So that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I failed to mention and introduce our Zoom participant and panelist as well, so please accept my humble apologies. Dr. Shalonda Baker is also joining us online, so everyone that's in person, give a good wave, and if you're online, you can give a good wave as well. And Dr. Shalonda Baker is the inaugural Vice Provost for Sustainability and Climate Action at the University of Michigan. She joined the university after serving as the Senate-confirmed Director of the Office of Energy, Justice, and Equity, Secretarial Advisor on Equity, and Chief Diversity Officer at the United States Department of Energy. Prior to that, she served in the Biden-Harris administration as the nation's first Deputy Director for Energy Justice. In her book, Revolutionary Power, An Activist Guide to the Energy Transition, argues that energy policy is the next domain to advance civil rights. I think we all can appreciate that topic and discussion. So please give Dr. Shalonda Baker a round of applause as well, and a warm welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be on this panel.
And now we will go to Chandra Farley, and we'll go from there after that. Chandra.
Thank you, Reverend Dr. Tiffany Mackey. And thanks to everybody for being here today. I'm excited to be here with my colleagues and my friends on this panel. Again, I'm Chandra Farley. I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer for City of Atlanta, and I lead the Mayor's Office of Sustainability and Resilience. Prior to that, though, I was an advocate and working at the intersection of racial equity and energy, and then prior to that had been on the technical assistance side of the multi-side coin, I will say, of this work, working at South Base Energy Institute. And the through thread of all of that is important for me, and coming to this work not from climate, coming to this work from community and centering community, and growing up sort of rooted in civil rights, I will say. I was raised by my grandparents in a small town in Tennessee, about 40 minutes north of Nashville, although I'm closer to Kentucky than I am to Nashville. And growing up, we had a restaurant, and my great-grandparents had a garden, and whatever was growing in that garden showed up on the menu at the restaurant, depending on what that was. And my first job was following our waitresses around and scraping the food off of the plates into these big 5-gallon slop buckets, we called them, and my cousins that had farms outside of town would come and pick those up and feed the pigs, turn into compost, all of those things. And so before I had language for quote-unquote sustainability and quote-unquote climate action, I was immersed in and doing things. Also in his quote-unquote spare time, my daddy used to like to fix up houses, and a lot of people that ended up renting those houses were sometimes the women that worked at our restaurant or the people that were in our church. And so running around and looking in and out of walls and looking at foundations and windows and all of those kinds of things. So that being from the country, and doing country girl things, and then learning science and culture, because being raised by my grandparents, being Black in the South, they remember not being able to vote, and they went to segregated schools, and those schools were later my elementary schools. So I think jumbling all of that up as I coursed out my career to end up here now today as a Chief Sustainability Officer, through frame of what I know now as environmental justice has always been critically important. And so when I came into the role at City of Atlanta, we had experienced some deprioritization of sustainability and climate resilience in a previous administration. And so I give Mayor Dickens a lot of credit for reestablishing what we now know as the Mayor's Office of Sustainability and Resilience with me when I came into the role, and also putting this position back on the Mayor's cabinet, which is really important, which we'll probably get into, because that is where all of our commissioners are: the watershed, parks and rec, the airport GM. And while as a mayor's office, I can set policies, plans, and targets, very ambitious targets, but I have to work in partnership and in fellowship and be in relationship with all of those commissioners, because our solar is on our recreation centers, it's on our fire stations, it's at the airport, our urban gardens are in our parks. I just drove down Ellis Street, where we did our first rubber modified asphalt paving project, which is supposed to help us begin to mitigate our urban heat island effect downtown that we're testing. So all of those things together, I think, are threads that I'm excited to get into conversation about today.
Thank you so much. Can we give Chandra a round of applause, please? Thank you, Chandra and Briante. I have the privilege of, again, knowing and working with both of you, and so always interested in hearing about your work. And now I am very interested in hearing from Dr. Shalonda Baker, who is joining us from Zoom, and I will pass the mic over for her to talk about her amazing and excellent work as well.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much for including me on this panel. I'm so honored to be here and wish I could be there in person. So thank you for allowing me to join virtually. Blessings to you, Dr. Farley, Chandra. We've known each other for almost a decade now, so it's great to be in this work together, and greetings to my fellow panelists as well. So I actually want to just acknowledge the awards that were just given to our young people. I spent 4 years prior to my current role in the Biden-Harris administration, really, at the front lines of trying to fight for a more just and equitable energy system. And there were so many moments where I didn't have the hope that is the theme of today's conference. And someone along the way, one of my colleagues said, "Do you know the Lakota name for children is sacred being?" And it's Wakanyeja, and that translates into sacred being. And so the thinking there is, if we think about all of our work as in service of their sacred existence and of their sacred futures, I think we would be in such a much better place. So I come to you today from Ann Arbor, Michigan, where I am the first ever Vice Provost for Sustainability and Climate Action at the University of Michigan. But I'm also a daughter of the South. I'm a first generation college graduate, first lawyer in my family. I stand on the shoulders of my mother, who was a single mom, who juggled bills every single month. And as she used to say, she was always borrowing from Peter to pay Paul. Now I know that we were a household that was energy insecure, which is something that impacts 1 in 3 American households. And that is, simply lacking reliable access to energy. And making those trade-offs every single month about whether to heat or cool your home, or eat or buy medicine, or heat or cool your home. And as someone who grew up in Austin, Texas, there were so many winter nights where we would sometimes use the oven to warm the house. And I know whenever I say that, people nod their heads, because we know what it was like to grow up in those kinds of households. Or, in the summertime, keeping the household at such a warm temperature that you would have to kind of stick your head in the fridge to cool off just for a minute. So I stand on the shoulders of my mom, who struggled every day, but who made sure I would have a place in this world. On the other side of my family, I stand on the shoulders of my father, who grew up in one of the most environmentally impacted communities in the country, Port Arthur, Texas. It's at the beginning of what is called Cancer Alley, which runs through the Gulf South. It is a place where there's a high concentration of petrochemical facilities, oil and gas facilities. Port Arthur is sort of known as the birthplace and the epicenter of the modern fossil fuel industry. And I would love to say that my father could be here listening to me today and having, bear witness to my career. But unfortunately, he died almost 20 years ago in his 50s because of his sort of childhood living and growing up in this polluted community, which is Port Arthur, Texas. So these are my two roots, my strongest roots, the energy insecurity, as well as the environmental injustice. And I didn't know, like Chandra said, I didn't know the language to describe this until I became a scholar and an activist in the energy justice world. I like to say that my entry point into climate change work was really systems change work. I think the systems that undergird all of the way we produce food, the way we produce energy, those are the things that need to change. Our economic system needs to change. And until we have those changes, we can continue to try to fight climate change, but we have to sort of get at the root, which is these systems that have created and produced the problem of climate change. And I think once we get to those systems changes, we can actually begin to tackle the climate crisis and actually produce a more just world. And so I'm hoping in our Q&A we can talk a little bit about the specifics of energy justice. I've alluded to energy insecurity. I've alluded to the environmental injustice pieces. But I'm really excited about the future. I mean, again, we have these sacred beings who made all that beautiful artwork and who received those awards. And those are the folks who we have to fight for. So thank you for allowing me to be on the panel and again, to dial in remotely. Turn it back to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Baker. What an incredible introduction and journey through your work. Thank you so much for sharing. And I wholeheartedly agree that systemic change is needed vastly across different areas of climate and environmental change work. I believe now we're going to move into our Q&A portion, beginning with Zoom. So I'm going to pass it off for those instructions and for our first question.
Brooks, just so you're aware, Reverend Dr. Tiffany is actually going to repeat the questions from the audience. We just thought that made much more sense. So thank you.
Excellent, terrific. Thank you so much to our panelists for those terrific opening presentations. For those in our Zoom audience, please put in your questions into the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. To get us started, I think one of the things that really impressed me this past 2 years ago is actually there was a White House event that lifted up resilience hubs in different parts of the country. And one of the resilience hubs was a church in Atlanta that runs a community center, feeds the neighborhood with a weekly meal program. And so I'm kind of curious to hear from any of our panelists about what you see as the potential of churches, right? As, in some sense, community-owned institutions that can provide a place for solar, for batteries, for spaces in times of power outages and disasters. So let me hear your thoughts on that, and also, connecting it to policy. What kind of policies we need to support that?
I think you're probably referring to the Resilience Hub at Vickers, which is Vickers is actually an acronym, but it is the outreach arm of Community Church on Cascade Road on the west side of Atlanta. And that was a partnership with Groundswell, led by Michelle Moore. And I think one of the important things to say about the Vickers project is that it was birthed not by name, prior to COVID, actually, related to some work that at the time, local racial equity organization that I was connected to, and Groundswell and National Renewable Energy Labs were doing some work with the Atlanta University Center on how to establish some solar and microgrid and storage technology with the campus. But we knew as we started that work that the Atlanta University Center sits in one of our most energy burdened zip codes in the city of Atlanta first, and that the university the university consortium as that anchor needed to be sure that those efforts included the surrounding community. So we had like a parallel effort of doing education, outreach, and organizing. And it was actually those community members who helped us identify potentially 4 sites that could host that resilience hub. It was all based, we came with our science, right, as we do as policymakers and technical assistance folks. And what we heard very clearly from them was some of those sites, a couple of them weren't going to work because of ownership structure. A couple of them we would bring and they would say, no, actually, our seniors have a hard time reaching this site for various reasons. Or, no, actually, I know some of the kids aren't able to access this site for various reasons. And so it was actually those early learnings from community and those community partnerships with people like Dr. Erica Holloman Hill, who were connected to Community Church, who had this space that I will say, and I think it's important, when we talk about resilience hubs now, I actually just left a meeting, an event with Green the Church over at Big Bethel, not too far from here on Auburn Avenue. And I think it's what we're always trying to remember, our churches are the original resilience hubs. The resilience is being about like a place of refuge. And churches are nothing else if not a place of refuge for the members and its surrounding communities. But now we have this really cool technology where we can do even more. And that was what was so important about Vickers being able to be positioned as one of these first resilience hubs, because they already had community trust and presence. They served 300 to 400 families weekly, maybe monthly. They have a pantry, a kitchen, a huge education space. So this is a space that community is already familiar with. It is a space that community already depends on. And that is what is required for all of these policy and technocratic solutions that we come up with, that they cannot be successful and as impactful as they are meant to be if we don't have those community-rooted relationships and those trusted community messengers. And so I think as this is now the thing, this is the thing that we have in this time where we cannot depend on Washington. And quite frankly, we should never be in a position to where that is what we have to depend on. We have technology that is available to us independent of what is happening in DC. And we know how to leverage our very energy is super hyper local, as Dr. Baker definitely will talk about. So we have our own very different contexts that what we do here in City of Atlanta in Georgia Power territory is very different from what someone in Snapping Shoals EMC territory is able to do. And what the church, the Concord Church, who just won the Dolly Burrell Award, is able to do. But the ultimate goal is the same, and that original rooting in creation, care values, and partnerships with our community and our members is what's most important.
Just want to talk about a little bit of the technical components of the Inflation Reduction Act, actually, not to take us back to those heady days where billions of dollars were flowing from the federal government to support clean energy. But the Inflation Reduction Act actually tried to tackle one of the structural problems that makes it difficult for nonprofits like churches to participate in clean energy production. So they embedded in the Inflation Reduction Act this provision for direct pay. So normally when there's a tax credit scheme, it only benefits those who have tax liability, which tends to be those who are wealthy or corporations, right? So individuals who have, some sort of tax liability or corporations. And so that leaves out swaths of community players like churches, like nonprofits who actually play essential roles in their communities, and can be resilience hubs and can provide essential energy and other services to communities. And so through the direct pay provision of the Inflation Reduction Act, churches and nonprofits were able to get up to 30% back for investments made in solar, which can support microgrids, which I know some of you may be familiar with, but those sort of small scale energy solutions that can benefit the congregation, can be a source of reliant and resilient power if there is a major weather event in a community. Similarly, not only investments in solar, but investments in batteries could have fit under that provision. So I just wanted to say that there are some structural barriers that make it difficult for churches to participate in large-scale tax credit schemes. So we should keep in mind that if we're looking at state legislatures to provide benefits down the road, or the federal government, again, if it realizes that, solar power is and clean energy is actually energy security, and will actually lower our costs. So if they're ever back in that game, we need to make sure that's still on the list of things that we include in any tax provisions.
And I just want to add just what I get most excited about the concept of resilience hubs. I'm not very technical. I'm mostly yelling at elected officials to do things like pass the Inflation Reduction Act, so that really technical people can make resilient hubs happen. But for me, I live right around the corner from the Vickers, so I've been able to go to that facility and see it evolve over time in becoming a stronger and stronger resilience hub. I have examples of what it looks like to have solar and battery storage, what it's like to have access to food, water, and electricity if there's a major climate disaster or storm or other extreme weather event. And so it's really, to me, they become like the visual representation of where we need to head for the future of our country and our world. We have spent so much time in the climate and environmental space trying to reduce carbon emissions. Unfortunately, it's not happening fast enough. The climate is changing. And what that feels like is more and more extreme weather events. The extreme downpours, the wildfires happening in South Georgia right now. People need a place to go because the infrastructure has not been built to withstand what is coming as a result of a changing climate. And so I get really excited when we are able to say, this is what we're talking about. Do you see this facility here? This is what we're trying to make happen. Imagine, even with all these things going on, you still have a place to go connect with community, get what you need, get access to information, rest, recharge, reset. That's what resilience is truly about. And so, just wanted to add that.
Thank you all for all of those amazing answers. I frequently talk about, are we providing a Band-Aid or are we addressing the wound? And so I think that all of your responses offer a good look into not just providing Band-Aids, but also providing interrogation and addressing of the wounds. And so now we will take any questions from the room. If you have a question, feel free to lift your hand as you are able, and then I'll just ask you to project your question and I can repeat it. Are there any questions in person? Yes, please go ahead. So I'm going to repeat the question for those online who were not able to hear the question. And I see Briante is already very excited with a response. So let me repeat the question very quickly. And please correct me if I'm misunderstanding or misinterpreting your question. Essentially, how do we shift the conversation and the dialogue and the actions, I would venture to guess is included in your question, from, yes, we need to recycle, reduce, and reuse, and also we have been polluting and feeding the beast and the machine that that is dirty energy for so long, what do we do and what actions do we need to take in order to shift the dialogue to clean energy and accountability as part of the actions that need to be taken? And then, Briante, I'll pass it to you.
Yes, and I'll start generally and then get specific to like utilities, because once I start talking about Georgia Power, it's a wrap.
We'll be here all day.
It's a wrap. So Dr. Baker said earlier that this is all systems, and I just really want to emphasize that when we're dealing with climate change, we are dealing with systems. And for many years, they emphasized the individual is responsible for the climate in the environmental crisis, right? They sort of ran ads telling us we needed to, recycle more and be more energy efficient and switch our appliances and things like that, which are not bad things to do, right? Because all those individual actions do add up over time to market change. But if you exist in a market that's fundamentally rigged, it's difficult to change it. And so a lot of the way that humans behave is because we've put policies in place that have created systems that we just exist within. Why is it that it was in DC, I got to walk everywhere I wanted to go, and I come to Atlanta, I'm back in my car, driving everywhere I need to go. That is something, individuals aren't making decisions about that level of infrastructure, right? That whether or not we have roads or public transit. Those are systems that government is making. They're putting policies in place that either support that or move us in the other direction. And so, they're like, well, just take, alternative transit. Yeah, well, it's hard. It's harder to do it in some places that don't have the infrastructure. So that's what I mean. You can mean well with your individual behavior, but if the system is designed poorly, you will just be caught up in that system. So when we get to energy, the story has been, turn off the lights or we will be sitting in the dark. To the point about growing up in a household that was energy burdened, that was my grandma always saying that, turn off the lights or we will be sitting in the dark. She truly believed that, every time we flipped the switch or plugged something in was what was causing the power bill to go up. Little did she know there is a utility, Georgia Power, that is making massive investments in energy generation and then putting those costs onto the power bills. So, yes, her flipping the switch off could help a little bit, but it was being dwarfed by this huge decision that was made by the utility to, for example, build a $30 billion nuclear plant to meet energy demand. Those costs end up on the bill no matter how efficient you are. You could turn off all of your lights and you're still going to have a minimum bill of fees and charges and, that you're going to get charged just for being plugged into the system. And so, this idea that we all just need to be more energy efficient is laughable. And so over the years, I've watched the power company make these huge decisions to build very expensive, power infrastructure. And the Public Service Commission, which is a body of elected officials, basically approve every single thing the power company needed them to approve. Anytime the power company wanted more money, they got it. And a lot of those monies is going to pure profits, about 20% of them, according to the Environment and Policy, Energy and Policy Institute's latest tracker. You can put your power bill in, anybody can do that, and you'll see how much of it's just going to pure profits. Because, when they build stuff, they put the charges on your bills and then they take home the profit. And right now, the latest decision that we've been wrestling with is in December, the Public Service Commission approved a $16 billion, 10,000 megawatt gas plant expansion. It's mostly gas. There's a little bit of other stuff, but it's mostly gas. This means they're going to burn all of that. They're going to build it. The $16 billion is just what it costs to build it, not what it costs to fuel it and maintain it over the years. And so they're going to build it. Those costs are going to end up on your bill. They said they froze the rates, but a freeze doesn't mean the rates are never going to go up. It's a temporary pause. And they're going to come back in 3 years when they think people aren't paying attention and ask for more money. And they're like, oh, well, we've got a policy in place that will let us charge the data centers more money, because part of why they need that $16 billion expansion is because of the increased demand from data centers. Are you building a data center as an individual? We're not making those decisions, right, as individuals. The power companies saying they need to build all of this and that they're going to charge the data centers more, but there's just not a lot of transparency on how much they're going to charge those data centers and if it's going to be enough to offset the costs that ultimately are going to end up on our power bills. So that's, rates to pay for building this stuff, but there's fees and there's charges. So if you build a bunch of gas plants, you got to buy the gas to burn. That's something that the power company can come back and ask for more money for. This year, they're also looking at storm cost recovery hearings. They're saying it's costing more money to keep the power on in all of these extreme weather events. There's a wildfire burning in South Georgia right now. That's an extreme weather event. A couple years ago, it was hurricanes, an extreme weather event. We're in a drought, an extreme weather event, which is what we are saying is going to happen as the climate continues to change. These extreme weather events become more and more common, and they're saying, well, it's costing us more and more to keep your electricity on when that happens, so we're going to charge you more and more. You can't turn the light switch off enough to make up for that impact. So systems matter here. And I do think that people are starting to pay more attention because they are doing everything they can. They are turning off the lights. They are unplugging the appliances, and the bills keep going up. And they're like, something's wrong here. And last year, a lot of Georgians realized that, and they started looking into the Public Service Commission. And a lot of people turned out to vote in November and elected 2 people who they feel like will be there to help make those systemic decisions differently. That will hopefully help us move in the direction we need to be moving with clean energy, but also in the direction we need to be moving with affordability. So yeah, we've got 2 more on the ballot this year, so keep paying attention. That's one individual decision that makes a lot of impact.
If I were in the room with you all, I mean, I would be just standing up, applauding that kind of dissertation on the energy system itself. The one additional piece I'd add. Well, so I was going to say, yes, you have to be at the PSC, the PSC, the PSC. Like, I wrote my book because I was seeing all of these regulatory proceedings play out, and the technical jargon creates a barrier for my mom, my dad, my uncle, my auntie, like for people to just engage. And this is where the system is being designed, full stop, right? So that is where folks have to just roll up sleeves. We need more organizations providing technical assistance and support so folks can provide comments. If you do have an elected set of regulators for your energy system, you've got to get out and vote for folks. You've got to have them, stay accountable. But the piece I was going to add was the deep irony in the resilience piece. So you're being charged by the utility for resilience when on the one hand, when on the other hand, the utility is burning fossil fuels. Make it make sense. Fossil fuels are causing the resilience problem that we face, right? The climate crisis is what has created all of this instability. So in some ways, it's just this cycle, right? That it's benefiting from on both ends, and it has to stop. And so I think when people realize the connection between the energy system and all of these other pieces of their lives that are materially impacted by climate change, that's when they're going to say, wait, hold up. And I think the other thing, and the last thing I'll say on this is, none of it is inevitable. These are systems created by humans. Like, we designed it. And the reason why we have this current and mainly investor-owned utility model where shareholders get the benefits of these investments and sort of get this quote unquote reasonable return on investments is because we needed to electrify the nation. Back in the 1930s, I mean, we're in a different world. We need other incentives for utilities. And so either we remake the regulatory system of incentives or we remake utilities. And one of them has to happen. And I think climate change is actually going to force the issue. And I hope people just become more and more aware of those links. So thank you for that beautiful summary, Briante. I really appreciated that.
Thank you both. Plus. Amen. So thank you both for those responses. Reverend Dr. Brooks, do we have another question on Zoom that we would like to move to?
Yeah, we have a question here. Can panelists speak to the dangers of recreating the same inequitable and extractive systems around the latest technologies offered up as solutions. For example, well-meaning folks who are pushing electric vehicles and AI, while local and indigenous and frontline communities are saying, "Wait, that mine for rare earth minerals is destroying our air, water, and health."
Particularly on the electric vehicle conversation, I was talking somewhere, and I'm going to age myself, but I very much feel like Paula Abdul in my head. 2 steps forward, 2 steps back. It's like, yes, we need to move to electrify, and then I went down a dark hole one evening some years ago on mining and Congo, and even before that, being at I even forget and what conference, but I was sitting at a table with some women. This was a housing sustainable built environment conference, and just sitting across the table for her, and we were kind of talking about EVs and EV charging, and she's like, nothing good. It's nothing good as far as where the minerals are coming from, where these sources. And Shalonda, you may remember this. We were with Dr. Diana Hernandez, who has built her energy insecurity work, and her new book is called Powerless, focused on energy insecurity. And she really talked about the trifecta of insecurity: housing, energy, and food. And when we think about that, and we were at Columbia a couple of years ago, and Shalonda asked us, is justice in energy possible? Energy is at its root an extremely extractive proposition. The way we get it, the way it's produced, distributed, and transmitted, all of that. So I'm constantly grappling with this question, and I go back to electric vehicles because I remember learning, okay, yes, we talk about reduction in emissions. That is critically important. Here in the city of Atlanta, our largest source of emissions is electricity serving buildings. Our second is transportation. We know we have a lot of congestion, and a very interesting question is, okay, let's push this transition to electric vehicles. Are we just going to have electric congestion then? Are we still going to be sitting in traffic, but just with electric traffic versus fossil fuel powered traffic? And then we think about, okay, so we started talking about electric vehicles reducing tailpipe emissions. Well, it's because, what do we know about electric vehicles? I just learned this. The torque is higher, or whichever the qualifier is that you use for torque, which means it is releasing faster and quicker the pollution from the tire, spinning and grabbing the road. And it's like, man, can we so there is always a trade-off for every single decision that we make. Are electric vehicles better than internal combustion engine vehicles? Yes, full stop. But we're also electrifying our grid, and then we need electricity to charge those vehicles. Well, if you're here in Georgia and you're charging that vehicle, I'm sorry, it is 70-ish% fossil fuels. We don't get to choose where that 7% of renewables that Georgia Power has on its grid. It's there, but I don't. When I flip on my light switch, I'm not able to back channel Georgia Power and say I want my light switches to be run by that 7% of renewables. We're going to get what we're going to get, right? So I'm not answering the question because there are so many questions in the question, and just thinking about what's better, how do we make those incremental improvements, and then as we electrify and electrify and electrify, what's still that back end of that generation and transmission that we have to grapple with.
I think I'll jump in as well. The question takes me back to my time in the Biden administration. So, we had historic money. We had $1 trillion to spend on decarbonization. And the bipartisan infrastructure law came out in fall of 2022. And I read through it word for word. I mean, I'm a lawyer, like I like to read law. And I was just like, what's in it for us? Like, what is the Department of Energy going to do? Because I was embedded in the Department of Energy and I was in charge of leading the just transition for the energy department. And I read it through. And when I finished, I just cried. I cried for a few reasons, but I cried because the investments that we were going to make were industrial investments, and we've never gotten industrial development right. It's what caused Cancer Alley. It's what has created environmental justice communities. And I knew that we needed to sort of rewire and rethink development. The development paradigm is what needs to shift. It doesn't matter what solutions we have. It doesn't matter if we have EVs. It doesn't matter if we have, figured out the critical minerals mining piece. What we need is new development paradigms, paradigms that truly offer benefits, paradigms that put communities at the table on day one and don't bring them in after the plan is made and say, well, what do you want now that we're going to do this plan? It's about having communities envision their own futures. And so we've got to figure out how to stop the train. The resources that we're expending to build out the data center infrastructure, for one example, those are not renewable resources. Once the land has, 14 football fields worth of concrete on it, you're not going to be able to use that as farmland for generations. So these are not renewable resources that are easily recaptured. Once the water is gone, once the water table is gone, it will take hundreds, if not thousands of years, frankly, to regain that. And so what that means is we need to rethink what drives development. Now, I'm not a sort of no development anytime. Well, can a community member, can communities be the ones, thinking about what they want in their communities? Can communities be the ones actually deriving the economic benefits, being equity shareholders, being owners of projects? That changes how we do things, because then it's like, well, let's recycle all of these things that we've been building for the last 150, 200 years since the Industrial Revolution began, and put all of that material into this transition. Right now, we're going to places in Africa to mine minerals. We're going to, tribal lands in Indian country to mine minerals. We have enough that has already been created and produced. We just need to recycle it. We need new systems. And again, this goes back to my original comments. So we need new systems of development. And again, it doesn't matter how technologically savvy we are and what the engineers create. I love my engineers. If we don't have the right systems through which all of that technology flows, the just systems, all of that new technology is just going to reproduce and replicate harm. So my foot stomp in this panel today is really for that systems change piece.
Thank you so much, Dr. Baker. Such an insightful response, and I'm detecting, and I may have a little bit of bias here, but I'm detecting a common thread in there's a lot that we can do at the local and the state level. We don't always have to rely on the federal government in order for our solutioning. And you mentioned, the fire that's happening in South Georgia right now. I found it very interesting that a couple of years ago, I was in a room at a heat policy summit and found out that heat is not considered an extreme weather event by FEMA standards. It's not on the list of something that they can respond to. And all of us just sat in the room like, what do you mean? And so if we're pulling on this common thread, and this will, I believe, be our last opportunity for response from the panelists. So I'll make it quick, and then hopefully if our panelists could make these responses quick so we can do our wrap up. What is something, when we talk about power to the people, I like to say my motto is all politics start local. Your vote is not just at the ballot. It's every time we go into a grocery store. It's every time we're at a PSC meeting. It's every time we're looking at MPUs. If all politics are local and we are looking for power to the people, what is one thing you would invite people to do to engage in the power dynamics themselves? And that's for each of our panelists.
One thing is hard. One thing is hard. There's lots of little things that you can do, but I would say my first response was like, because we were talking about development, was like, go to a zoning hearing, like go be involved with your zoning board, because like that is where massive land use decisions are being made, right? They look at the land area in the city, they chop it up, they decide, well, this is where the warehouses can go, this is where we're going to get townhomes, this is where the apartments go, this is where the business corridor is. All of those are land use and planning decisions that are happening at your city and your county level. And so to me, that's like when I get called by people who want help fighting something, it's like too late. The zoning was already set. It said it was industrial. The company bought it. They own the land. They got the permits. Then the public was like, wait, what's going on? It was too late at that point. So, to me, like being involved in land use discussions at the hyper local level is really important for like how communities ultimately look. But if you're just really not wanting to go to a zoning meeting at 7 p.m. on a Tuesday, I understand that. My other thing that I like to tell people is like, what do you do like professionally as a hobby, and like try to make it as environmentally friendly as possible? Like that way I'm not asking you to do anything that you don't already like to do. You don't have to be a technical expert. You don't have to learn zoning code if you don't want to, but just like we're all like human beings, and we all are making like impact in our respective areas. I have the privilege of working in this field. A lot of people don't. And so, what is it that you can do in your level, your sphere of impact, and like just try to make it as green as possible. And that's I think something everybody can do.
Yeah, same vein. I have started to say, find your justice home, which is something that Dr. Mildred McLean, who's co-founder of Harambe House, it's an almost 40-year-old environmental justice organization based in Savannah, Georgia, founded really rooted in trying to help build awareness around the Savannah River site and what was happening around the Savannah River site and what was happening to the river right around Savannah, but up that whole corridor. And yeah, just, where are you at? Where is it? Can you, we're at a church, just like I said, I just left Big Bethel, and everything's styrofoam, everything's in plastic. Can we say, you know what, we're not gonna buy, we're gonna let our styrofoam clamshells run out, and we're gonna buy, paperboard that we have. We're not gonna do plastic bottles anymore. We're gonna either, one of the fathers there from a church was saying they don't do water bottles for Sunday school anymore. They put in water bottle refill stations, and everybody brings their water bottles. It goes back to the conversation earlier about, does it matter? Does it matter? Yes, it matters, because downstream you're shifting a market. People who are making these things notice a decline, and so they're ordering less. And that ultimately should go upstream. And so you do have to start where you are. Find your justice home. What am I doing today? What is that one activity? Because that will spark a question of why. When you propose a change, well, why do we have to do that? Well, why? Well, and then you get into, then that leads to another conversation about how our individual choices do have impact from community, neighborhood, community, regional, local, state, and then on from there.
Excellent, thank you.
I'm aware that the problem is systemic, and I appreciate you emphasizing that, because I think that's very important. I'm looking at ways now to add environmental justice to my list of criteria for any candidates who seek my vote, because they ought to be able to tell me something about what the plans are environmentally for my community and what they endorse. So I'm certainly going to add that. I just read or saw recently where Zoran Mamdani in New York City, they've had, well, we're facing drought. They had a snowstorm recently. Anyway, he hired city civilians to clean out the snow. And it says that in days, the streets were clear. Even though I'm a son of the South, I went to school in New York City. So I remember weeks in my neighborhood, intractable, you couldn't get through. I was in the hood, Bronx. Now, if you were in Manhattan, you could get around because they're not gonna keep that blocked up. But up in the hood where I was in the Bronx, we were snowed in for, it could be a week. And so I'm just looking at ways now that we can take the challenges that we have fostered with climate crises and so forth, and look at the jobs now that can be created. By the way, people got paid good money. He paid good money. He took the city's resources and helped people to face their environmental crisis. And people don't like it. What a surprise. That's what I think we're getting at. If we can take our resources systemically, institutionally, and put them into helping people dig out of the mess that we have got ourselves into, that will be a win-win. So that's what I'm looking for now.
Amen. Thank you. And Dr. Baker, and then we'll move to our wrap-up.
Wow. I mean, that's the mic drop there. I think, I always say vote, the run for office, but everybody's not going to do that. I would say, to add something that hasn't already been said, because I agree with everything that has been said, let us go to the children. Let us start there and have them understand what's at stake. So if there are volunteer opportunities, if there are ways to interact with young people in your day-to-day or in your, whenever you can, there has to be a space to talk about what is at stake. And of course, they're going to say, well, what are you doing? So they will keep you accountable, but we have to make sure they're also educated, because climate change has become a political issue. I think if there's one silver lining for what's happening right now with the cost of energy, it is that breaks down all the partisan stuff. It's like, no, if my energy bill is too high, if my bill is too high, I'm mad. And I want someone who is in office who will make sure that is not the case. So we have politicized this, but if we can start with the children who are in some ways are more logical, I think we do have a better future ahead for these sacred beings. So again, thank you for letting me be on this panel, and sorry I couldn't be there in person.
All right. Thank you so much to our panelists. I mean, you've got me fired up to want to go out and do something. And I'm going to tell you just a little something about a secret, I think, to success sometimes that I've had to learn the hard way. Because sometimes my activism is like a New Year's Eve resolution. I get fired up. I come out of the Earth Summit, I'm fired up, ready to go. And then a month later, it's putter, putter, kaput, in terms of that New Year's resolution. And what I have witnessed making the difference for myself, and what I've witnessed making the difference for our Climate Hope affiliates, is that when you involve yourself in a community of action, where you're getting together on a regular basis and you're supporting each other and you're cheering each other on and you're learning together, you stick with it and you stay in it. And so I want to take this moment now to really invite and encourage people to check out Climate Hope affiliates. For those in Atlanta, we're passing around a clipboard for you to connect with your chapter, and our chapter in Atlanta. For those on Zoom, we have got a couple of links for you to check out. We've got our main page for Climate Hope affiliates. We've got a place where you can let us know if you're interested in experiencing the cathartic joy of taking action in a time like this. And so let us know if you're interested. We have seen just wonders in just in the past month, we have seen some amazing things. We had a chapter in Downers Grove at their launch workshop. They were contacting their senators who had not last year their senators had not signed a public letter in support of EPA funding. But lo and behold, 3 days later, we called their office, and both Durbin and Duckworth signed that public letter, not only calling for increase in EPA funding, but also for putting back in environmental justice program at the EPA. Right? That's the kind of thing that our chapter is able to do. Having a town hall with your elected official. That's what, within their first month of existence, that's what our Glen Allen chapter did. So those are exciting ways that people can take action and let that desire and commitment continue to live on past the New Year's Eve resolution window. So take some moments to learn about that. We are excited to have everybody here today. So grateful for everyone who has come out and all those of you in our audience for today. Zena, we've got a little bit more to our program. I'm going to turn it back to you.
That's right, Brooks. We're going to hear from one of the sponsors of this summit, Pathways Theological Education. One of the members of our Atlanta Climate Hope Affiliates chapter has been instrumental in creating one of the terrific programs that they offer. The Reverend Jenny Farrell is going to tell us about this program. But before she speaks, I would like to personally thank everyone for joining us. And for those who are here in the church, immediately after the summit, please join us downstairs in the fellowship hall for light refreshments, where I'd like to point out we are using compostable napkins, cups, plates, and cutlery, and will recycle and reuse as much as possible, including the reusable black cups that you have been seeing in front of our speakers. So now I'm going to turn it over to Reverend Ginny. Thank you.
Thank you. This has been a terrific day. Thank you. Thank you for your contributions over there, all four of you. Wow. I want to move out of hell.
Amen.
I want to change
Amen.
things. So I bring that to you because in Pathways Theological Education, which is an online program where people get to know each other. It's not, you just don't sit there, you have online conversations, you go back to your congregation or faith community and you do a project together related to the learning. So it builds community, which is one of the things I think we've been talking about. We are launching an environmental justice program this August, 17 courses, 3 levels. And let me just go real quick. The first level offers an introduction to environmental justice, goes back into history, the doctrine of discovery, and places that this has been systemic for a very long time. And then, and we go local. What do you know about the place you live? Get down in the dirt and see if it's good, see if it's been used well. What's your community history? And then we invite you to advocate for justice, equity, and sustainability, both for people and the planet. And we chose 4 areas: agriculture, food, transportation, energy, and water. And those courses get into the kind of conversations you were having. And we also realized that during those conversations and out in the world with our congregations, we need empathy. We need to know that this is a climate-changed world already. How do we acknowledge one another? And finally, we want to build a Christian praxis with evidence-based science that puts environmental justice first and foremost in a living a Christ-centered life where healing our planet becomes our work. Writing for this program moved my own Christian journey to a fuller understanding of what it means to be rooted in the Christ of all creation and grounded in God's gift of the earth. Pathways welcomes all people who yearn for a still-speaking God, whether for one course or a full program. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. A big thank you to everyone who made this summit possible. Thank you to our sponsors, Pathway Theological Education, United Church Funds, the Pension Board, the Church Building and Loan Fund, the Insurance Board, and the Cornerstone Fund. And thank you to the Southeast Conference. A big thank you to First Congregational Church of Atlanta and to the members of our Atlanta chapter for all that you did to make today happen. Got to signal out Zena, because Zena has been working so hard to make this summit happen. And so a celebratory bouquet for you, Zena, for everything that you have done. Much appreciated. We have got webinars coming up the next month. We'll let you know about that. But for now, let us leave here today knowing that, let us pray that may the resilient and enduring spirit of God be with each of you. As we leave here today, may God's Spirit embolden and empower you. May it lift you up as this movement for justice continues to rise and break forth. Take care, everyone. God bless.